Since we're going over subtracting integers today, and this is something that is relatively new, I first want to review some of the things that we've done so far, and that is adding integers. And by now, most of you should be familiar with how to do the following problem. Let's say that I gave you something like 3 plus 4. Obviously, that's equal to 7, and we are adding a positive. Notice that we are adding, this is not subtraction. We'll do that in a second. So we are adding 3 positives with 4 positives gives me 7 positives. In the same way, if I were to add 3 negatives and I were to combine that, that's what addition means. If I were to combine that with 4 negatives, that would give me a grand total of 7 negatives. And so this led us to the rule that we learned previously, that when I am adding, only when I am adding, and we have the same sign, okay, so they're both negative or they're both positive, we just add them together and we keep the same sign that we started with, right? Hence why the first one was positive and the second one gave us a negative answer. Now, where things start to get interesting was when we were adding, but we had a negative number and we were combining that with a positive number, like -3 plus 4. Even though we are indeed technically adding, we learned that because one of the numbers is negative and the other one is positive, these are basically not in agreement with one another. Therefore, even though we're adding, we're actually going to be subtracting them because they have different signs. One of them is negative and one of them is positive. Because they have different signs, we're going to find the difference between these two numbers, meaning we're going to subtract. And 4 minus 3 is 1. And since we have more positives, that would actually be positive 1. Similarly, if I had 3 plus negative 4, in this case, again, I am combining a positive with a negative, even though I am adding. I'm actually going to subtract them because they have different signs. I'm going to get the difference or the subtraction between these two numbers. And 4 minus 3 again is 1. And in this case, since I have more negatives, that would give me -1. All of this should be reviewed. If I'm going too fast, I recommend that you look at the previous video for previous lessons so that you see exactly how to do this. But all of this should be reviewed. And the question should be, well, Mr. Lugo, why are we going over addition if today we're supposed to be going over subtraction? That is because, ladies and gentlemen, whenever we are subtracting with negative numbers, we are not going to do it. We're not going to actually subtract. Instead, we're going to find a way, or rather, I'm going to show you a way that you can take a subtraction problem and change it to an addition problem since we already know how to add positive and negative numbers. Consider this, that subtraction and addition are opposites. So actually, we can change subtraction to addition. So instead of teaching you a whole confusing set of rules for subtraction, I'm going to teach you how to change the subtraction problem into an addition problem. And then we just apply the same rules. So in essence, we're doing the same thing as what we've done, except one more step. The first step, which is to change it from subtraction to addition. All right, so again, we're going to subtract by changing it to addition using an acronym known as KCC. And then we're going to apply the addition rules. So what is KCC? Well, let's look at the problem that I have down here. All right, this is number 11A from our assignment. And pay special attention to the colors that I'm using because I'm using those for a reason. And the first problem is, or rather 11A says -12 minus, so notice how now we are subtracting. So this is a subtraction problem, okay? Minus, and then -3 is our second number. Okay. So in order to better explore this, I want you to write these letters largely. We have a K, just like I have, K, C, C. And the K stands for keep, so please write that down. Keep, change, change. Keep, change, change. So ladies and gentlemen, what that means is that we're going to take our first number, we're going to keep it exactly the same. So let me just rewrite the problem, -2 minus -3. That's the exact same problem that we just saw. We just wrote it larger here so we can easily see what's going on. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to keep the first number exactly the same. We're not going to change it. So -2 is going to stay as -2. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to change the operation to its opposite. So since we are subtracting, we're going to change to its opposite, which is addition. So we change it to addition. And finally, we're going to change the second number to its opposite. So here, since we have -3, the opposite of -3 is +3. So that's going to leave us with +3. Our new problem now reads -2 plus +3. Do we not know how to do that already? Yes, we know how to add integers, even if they have different signs. So here we are, even though we're technically adding, we're actually going to subtract these two numbers because they are going in different directions. So 3 minus 2 is 1, and it's going to be +1 because we have more positives than we do negatives. So my answer would be +1. Now here's where things get a little tricky for some people. Ladies and gentlemen, this +1 is the answer to the original problem. I did not actually change the problem. I simply changed our perspective of it. We were first viewing it as a subtraction problem, but in order to better understand it, all we did is we changed our perspective. In other words, -2 minus -3 is the exact same thing as -2 plus 3. Mr. Lugo, they look very different. I know they look different. I know that one is subtraction, one is addition. I know that one of them has a -3, whereas the other one has a +3. But ladies and gentlemen, these two problems are exactly the same problem. We're just viewing them from different perspectives. So therefore, -2 minus -3 is equal to +1. How do I know that? Because I observed it from the addition perspective, and we know how to solve this. The answer is +1. Now, I'm not going to take the time in this video to explain to you why this works, why we can change it from subtraction to addition, but I just need you to believe me. Later on, we may cover the why, but at this point, I just want to teach you how to change the subtraction to addition, since we already know how to add positive and negative numbers. Let's try a different one. All right, let's try number 11b, and I'm going to make it larger over here so that we can all follow along. Again, we're going to do number 11b. Actually, I'm going to minimize this a little bit so I can use the sides over here. So 11b reads, so here's 11b, right over here, and it reads 1 minus 6. Now, I know that that looks a little bit odd because if you try to see it as a subtraction, we're taking 6 away from 1. That's kind of odd. So let's go ahead and change this problem. Here, let me write it better. 1 minus 6. Let's go ahead and change this problem to an addition problem using KCC. Keep, change, change. Notice how I wrote down the K right below the first number. I wrote down the C below the subtraction sign, and I wrote down the C next underneath the second number. So keep the first number, so 1 remains 1, +1. Change from subtraction to addition, and we're going to change from +6 to -6. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I have 1 plus -6. Notice that even though I am adding, we're actually going to subtract because we have different signs. 6 minus 1 is 5. And since we have more negatives than positive, my final answer is going to be -5. All right. 1 minus 6, keep, change, change to addition. So 1 minus 6 is equal to -5. That's my final answer. Notice how I showed my work, ladies and gentlemen. I have the original problem, and then I wrote down KCC, the K underneath the 1, the C underneath the minus sign, the C underneath the 6, and then I rewrote it as an additional problem, and then I solved it. This is how you show your work. This is what I expect to see for each problem. Let us try another one. This is number 14. Number 14, so again, I'm going to write it over here. 14, this is what you would write in your notebook if you were doing number 14, and we write the original problem. And guys, once you write the original problem, don't mess with it anymore. Just leave it there so that you always have a copy of what you started with. 1 minus -8. Notice how we are subtracting. We are not going to subtract. Instead, we're going to apply K, C, C, meaning that we are going to keep the first number. So we're going to keep the +1. We're going to change the subtraction to addition, and we're going to change the second number to its opposite. So -8 changed to 8. Ladies and gentlemen, what is 1 plus 8? Is that not equal to 9? Yes, it is. That means that 1 minus -8 is equal to 9. Now, I know that this is going to confuse a lot of you. How? How is this possible? Ladies and gentlemen, again, at this point, I need you to just believe me. All right. If indeed you're super curious about why this works, I can go over it later. But for now, know that when I change 1 minus -8 to an addition problem using KCC, it becomes 1 plus 8 and 1 plus 8, two positive numbers. If you have 1 positive plus 8 positives, you have 9 positives. That is the answer. All right. Let's just go ahead and do one more together before I move you guys to your assignment. And this problem reads, this is number 15. So in your notebook, I am showing you how to show your work. Number 15, we have -6, that's my first number, minus, that's my operation, -2, that's my second number. Notice that we're subtracting, so I'm not going to subtract. I'm going to use keep, change, and change. And by doing keep, change, change, this is going to actually become -6. So we're going to keep the first number, plus -2 changes to 2, -6 plus 2. Now we are adding, we're combining a negative and a positive. So even though we're technically adding, we're actually going to get the difference because they have different signs. 6 minus 2 is 4, and it's going to be -4 because we have more negatives and positives. That is my final answer. If I was going too fast, I recommend you go back and rewatch this part of the video. But ladies and gentlemen, again, you write the first problem, you do KCC to make an addition problem, and then you just follow the addition rules that we